Reporting for The Nation, Jeremy Scahill has released a report on CIA operations and secret sites in Somalia. And according to Scahill, in a back corner of Mogadishu's international airport is a sprawling walled compound run by the CIA, where they run a counterterrorism training program aimed at building an indigenous strike force to carry out combat operations against members of al-Shabaab. But that's not all. Reportedly, there's another secret prison buried in the basement of Somalia's National Security Agency headquarters, where prisoners are held, some of them rendered from Kenya. And although the underground prison is officially run by the Somalis, U.S. intelligence personnel pay the salaries of intelligence agents and also directly interrogate those prisoners. It's direct evidence of an expanding U.S. operation in the country, and also a continuation of Bush-era policies carried out by the Obama administration. So just how many resources is the U.S. putting there? And does this mean that our counterterrorism policies really are reaching worldwide proportions? Or earlier, I caught up with Jeremy Scahill, national security reporter for The Nation magazine and author of the book Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army. And I first asked him if he had any idea when he went to Mogadishu that this is what he would find.
Well, I went there as part of an investigation I'm doing into U.S. targeted killing operations, and my original intent in going there was to look at the way that the Joint Special Operations Command was engaged in targeted killing operations inside of Somalia. Within a couple of days of arriving in Mogadishu, I received information that indicated that the CIA had just set up a secret counterterrorism training base at the airport, and then I met a man who told me that he had been in a basement dungeon prison in a facility where there were also CIA operatives, and that's how we started our investigation. So yes, we were looking into the idea of targeted killing and covert ops. No, we did not know that the CIA was using a secret prison there or had set up a new base at the airport in Mogadishu. Well,
so can you tell me a little bit more about these compounds, starting first at the new base at the airport? Is this something that's really closed off and secretive, or is it just out there in plain sight for all to see?
Well, it's probably the most poorly kept secret in Mogadishu, if it is secret, because everyone from the kids chewing cot leaves on the street to senior government officials certainly knows that the CIA has set up a base at the airport. In fact, you can see it from the tarmac as you're standing there waiting to board planes or as you get off the planes. It's a fairly big compound with walls that guard it, guard towers in all four corners. And the reason it caught my attention was because it looked very much like the U.S. forward operating bases that I've seen in Afghanistan and elsewhere. And then when I started talking to government officials from the U.S.-backed Somali government and intelligence officials on the ground, I discovered that, in fact, it was a CIA base and that they were training and paying Somali counterterrorism agents, and they're trying to set up an indigenous strike force capable of doing targeted kill and capture operations against the militant group al-Shabaab.
Now, you also reported that so your Somalian source, or one of them that you spoke to, said that these guys are lined up about once a month and paid $200 in cash. How much money is that for a Somalian?
For Somali people, $200 a month is a huge amount of money. I mean, let's remember, this is a country that hasn't printed its own currency since 1991. It's a place where the best chance that a young man in particular has of employment is by working as a militia member with an AK-47. So to have $200 is a pretty decent salary, especially if it's consistent. And to have it paid in American money is the best way that it could be done. I mean, relative to what you and I would think would be good pay, obviously it's not much money at all. In Somalia, that's a tremendous amount of money for an individual to make.
Okay, and so then if we look at the fact that they've been paying these people, they've been training them to set up these operations, has any of it actually been successful?
I mean, I think the U.S. so-called counterterrorism approach in Somalia has relied on two primary things. One is the U.S. is doing unilateral strikes using JSOC or the CIA in rural parts of Somalia, and in some cases, civilians have been killed, making the Shabaab even stronger and angering local populations. On the other hand, inside of Mogadishu, the only thing that the U.S. can rely on, for the most part, as a replacement for intelligence is indiscriminate shelling by the African Union forces known as AMISOM that are funded and armed by the United States. They just indiscriminately shell areas where the Shabab are believed to have strongholds, and they force everyone to flee, the Shabab and the civilians that were living there. And it really is just a replacement for accurate intelligence, and it's angering and enraging a lot of people and causing a lot of civilian damage and civilians to be killed. And as part of that, this counterterrorism training program the CIA has is in theory aimed at doing more surgical operations, but the Somali intelligence sources that I spoke with said they've only tried one operation in a Shabab-controlled area, and it was a disaster, and the Somali agents ended up getting killed, and they haven't tried one since, and that was late last year. They also told me they don't have a single credible informant in the Shabab areas. And remember, the US-backed government in Mogadishu only controls 30 square miles of the capital city. Much of the rest of the city, and in fact the country, is in the hands of warlords, clans, or al-Shabaab.
Now, I really want to get into this subterranean prison that you were told about. What goes on there? When we talk about interrogations, are U.S. officials directly involved in the interrogations? Are these harsh interrogation techniques? Did you get any of those details?
I just want to be clear that what I reported in my article was what I felt that I journalistically had the right to report. In other words, I had multiple sources. I believed that it was true. On the issue of harsh interrogation, I don't have any information that I can report that there is torture taking place in the prison or anything that we would know in this country as harsh interrogation techniques. Having said that, the conditions in the prison themselves sound to me like abuse. It's in a dungeon where there are no windows and no sunlight. The air was described to me as thick and disgusting, and totally unsanitary conditions, bed bug infestation throughout the prison, mosquitoes, prisoners that seem to be going crazy, rocking against walls, banging their heads on the walls. I was told there are children, young boys that are also inside of the prison. Many of the people that are there were picked up on suspicion of having links to al-Shabaab or al-Qaeda, and I was told very directly by multiple Somali intelligence officials and government officials that the American and French intelligence agents that work with the Somalis directly interrogate prisoners if they ask, and that it does happen, and that the Somali intelligence agents let them do it freely. When I spoke to well, I can't say the name of the entity that I called for comment because they told me that I could only identify them as a U.S. official, but let's just say a U.S. official familiar with these operations said that the Americans only debrief terror suspects in the presence of Somali agents and only jointly with those Somali agents. That was contradicted by everyone else I talked to for this story.
Now, Jeremy, everything that you've reported here, if it's all true, is a very big deal. Not only is it a continuation of Bush policies by the Obama administration when it comes to having secret prisons, when it comes to rendition, when it comes to detaining people in such harsh conditions, but I'm just curious why then it is that we haven't seen you on every single news channel, why all of those real news networks out there aren't dying to get the story from you.
Yeah, so far it's just been Democracy Now!, Al Jazeera, and Russia Today, RT, that have expressed serious interest in this story. And I should say the story is 100% true. And the U.S. government, when I called them for comment, confirmed that it was true. They just tried to play semantics with. They were concerned that I was going to call it a black site. They were concerned that I was saying that they were directly interrogating the prisoners. They prefer the term debriefing of prisoners. You know, so that was where the issue was. I think that there's a couple of factors here. One, both CNN and ABC News did stories on their websites that, in the case of CNN, didn't even mention my report and just basically reprinted a press release from the CIA saying that, you know, they were just assisting the Somali government. ABC News did something far more insidious. They mischaracterized what I reported and then had a U.S. official responding and denying something that I didn't even say, which is that the U.S. was running a counterterrorism detention facility. What I said is exactly what I reported, and that is that the U.S. is paying the salaries of Somali agents who are operating an underground dungeon prison, and that U.S. officials are interrogating prisoners there. That is 100% true, and no one from the government will come forward to deny it because they know it's true. And so these media outlets are serving as conveyor belts for the propaganda of the Central Intelligence Agency, which is very good at spin.
And lastly, I just want to ask, there have been some critiques out there, people that say that you disclosed national security secrets, that you could be putting Americans at risk. What's your response to all of that?
Our counterterrorism policies in many of these countries are putting Americans at risk, especially when we kill civilians. But specifically on the issue of these sites, the CIA needs to investigate their own operational security, because when a kid chewing cot leaves on the street knows where your headquarters is, that's not good operational security. When you can see it when you fly into the airport, that's not good operational security. So if anything, I think that this should be used as a wake-up call for the CIA to examine its own operational security procedures. Everyone knows about this, including journalists who just for some reason have decided not to report on it. But it's the worst kept open secret in Mogadishu.
All right, Jeremy, well, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. We're so happy you could make it on the program, and very happy that there are people like you out there reporting on these stories.
Thank you.